Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for making it out today to the second in the series of debris management workshops for 2017. Today's topic is going to be focusing on public information and how that is incorporated into disaster debris management operations. I want to call your attention to Becky right here with h-gac. She's got the cell phone in her hand, and she's going to be live streaming the first 30 minutes of today's workshop, or first 20 minutes, in case your arms get tired, on h-gac's Facebook page. And so we're Facebook Living today's workshop, and I thought of this during the last workshop because of the fact that Carl actually and I were in Albany, Georgia this past January, and we were doing a public information meeting. We had representatives from the community, faith-based organizations that were in attendance, and right in the front row, there were 2 or 3 people with their cell phones out, just pointed at me the entire time. We also had the lady in the local ABC affiliate who had her camera on the tripod, the normal, one of those type of cameras. Then right next to it, she had a tripod with her cell phone on it, and again, pointed directly at me. And
now he's hooked, and now we are live streaming every presentation.
That's right. Yes, I may have,
got the bug.
Texted a few people, told them I was famous, Mr. Worldwide now. So, what I will say is that I think it's important, Facebook Live and the ability to stream the information to an audience. I was even taking questions, which is something else you can do with the Facebook Live feature, where those people who can't make it out or who are unable to get out of the house can really participate and to get the information firsthand. So I felt it important that we utilize Facebook Live as a tool today as we talk about public information. So, Karen.
All right. Let's see. Well, there we go. So our agenda today, we'll do a round of introductions so we know everybody that's in the room. We'll talk about the changes in public information, kind of how we did things in 2008 during Hurricane Ike, and now how we're doing things now with new technology and new tools, moving away from kind of text-heavy documents to more, visual aids and things like that. We'll talk about public information and the communication process. So at different points during disaster debris operations, there's certain times where you're going to want to put out a press release. So we'll talk through that whole, the preparedness phase, the response and recovery, and when to send out different notifications. So we'll talk through that. We also have a guest speaker that's going to come and talk to us about just their PIO perspectives during disasters. We'll take a break a couple of times during the presentation, let everybody get up, stretch, grab a taco. We'll come back and we'll talk about challenges with public information, what happens when things hit the news, how to manage rumor control, how to deal with the fake news, those kinds of things, trending information that may be incorrect. So we'll talk through how to combat that. And then just some tools for communicating with the public. And we'll wrap it up with, we're actually going to do the guest speaker a little earlier in the presentation. And we'll wrap it up with some case studies of how other communities have used different types of social media and public information recently to help get information out regarding disaster debris. And then we'll open it up for discussion and questions. And that's our presentation for today. So we'll start with, I wonder where I should be pointing. Maybe.
All this technology and the clicker thing doesn't work. So maybe that's a lesson learned, is that the more you incorporate technology, the more things are left to change. One of the things I will say is that for those of you who are attending via the Facebook Live or watching this, 5 people? Awesome. I thought it was going to be 0, to be honest with you. So thanks to the 5 people out there. And what I would say is that HGAC does have this webinar, as they do all the webinars, on the HGAC website after this. You can relive the magic later on. But really, public information has changed so greatly, and so with that, I'm going to move to introductions. And my name is John Burry. I'm going to be the co-presenter today for this workshop. And so here we go.
My name is Carl Dix, Director of Client Services for Environmental.
Hi, Alonzo, Harris County Community Services Department, the Public Information Officer.
My name is Shahid Bainuddin. I'm the Houston Public Trust Engineer.
Hi, I'm Roy Turner, Chambers County Emergency Management Coordinator.
Sandra Lee, City of Lake City Finance. J.C. Hayes, City of West University Place, Administrative Coordinator. Jacqueline Caville, City of Houston Housing and Community Development, Public Information Officer. Sarah Klein, I'm an intern with the City of Houston.
Hafiz Siddiqui, City of Houston intern.
Tracy McKay, Harris County Precinct 3.
Scott Raven, Harris County Precinct 3.
Michael Collins, City of LaPorte, Superintendent of Solid Waste.
And there's Chanella back there.
All right.
And Karen?
And I'm Karen Self. I've been working on these workshops with HGAC for, I don't know, maybe about 7 or 10 years now. And so John and I will be taking you through our presentation today. So I think we can go to the next slide. All right, our purpose today is to acclimate participants to public information in disaster debris management. So we've got a couple of PIOs here today, so that's great, and some solid waste folks. We really want to bridge the gap to make sure that the information that Public Works and solid waste and those folks are pushing out is coordinated with your PIOs. So that's our purpose today, is just to kind of get some information out about how to incorporate public information into the debris arena.
And one thing I will say is that for the guest speaker today, it's going to be Francisco Sanchez. He's the Harris County Office of Emergency Management Public Information Officer. He's going to be talking today about some of the lessons learned from the floods last year, changes in public information, and going to give us kind of his perspective on maybe where industry trends are and what he sees. He's been around for a number of years, and we're going to be glad to have him coming up at around 9:30.
Next slide. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about changes in public information from where we were just about 10 years ago to how we're pushing information out now. So you can go to the next slide. So when we used to put together a public information packet specifically for disaster debris operations and debris management plans and things like that, the press releases were really text heavy, and there were these long, packages of information. Now we're kind of moving away from that. It's more bulleted, concise information. We're using a lot of visual aids now, infographics, things like that that'll catch the user's attention, so that you can give them as much information as possible in a short amount of time. So we're all our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. I mean, as consumers, we don't want to read these long, these long messages. So we're moving away from that really hard copy format to, our 170 character tweets. So now is really how we're getting a lot of information from officials. So just kind of moving away from that, again, those long press releases to a shorter format. And the challenges that go along with that. So, where you used to be able to provide a broad description of what the situation is, now you're condensed down to a smaller packet of information. So it's harder because you've got to make sure you get the right information out, concise and accurate and consistent with other formats. So.
And you're just bombarded. I mean, think about it after a disaster. You've got to know where to get food and water. You're going to know when your electricity is going to be coming on. Then you're worried about when the schools are going to be open again. And so you're, it is, or where to register for FEMA individual assistance. So all these things are coming at you, and now you're going to tell them, okay, we'll separate your debris into 5 neat piles, and this is when your debris collection starts, and it is a really it's a challenge. And again, not only just in how the media or how the message is directed, but how to make sure your message bubbles to the top, or at least gets close to the top, versus just push down to the bottom of the bottom of your Twitter feed, if you want to think of it like that.
Okay, we can go to the next one. Another trend that's a little different now is that there's a real capability for two-way communication. So instead of just pushing information out, you can use a lot of these tools to collect information about, where you've got serious issues or hotspots or things like that. So you can pull information from your users to, follow a hashtag, figure out where you've got a lot of damage, those kinds of things, so you can, monitor all of these feeds and figure out what everybody's talking about. Real, perceived, or not real, you can find out what people are talking about and at least mitigate some of that rumor control. So whereas before it was just pushing information out, maybe relying on folks to call into a hotline or something like that, now you can have almost instant information about, what disaster damage is out there, where debris is, causing issues, those kinds of things. So there's a back and forth flow of information from you to your residents and then back again.
And when we're speaking on two-way information, again, if those people on Facebook Live or have any questions, please let us know.
Yeah.
All right.
We got a clicker. All right. So again, using social media to capture information from your residents, we are going to talk about the old-fashioned way too. Hotlines and door-to-door communication and getting in front of people and having town hall meetings. Those are all very useful tools as well. This just adds another layer to how you can gain information from your residents. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the small portion of the population was getting their news and their information from social media. That is now skyrocketed. We're now looking at 70% of Americans that are using social media for public information. So I think my grandmother has a Facebook page. She's in her 90s, so everybody's on Facebook. So much so that I think the younger people are dropping off of Facebook and finding other Facebook's
more cutting edge. Yeah. Facebook's tired. Nope, but yeah.
So we've got, again, this was dominated by a younger generation, and now a lot of people are getting their information from social media. So I still look at the paper. I saw the paper this morning, a couple of headlines as I was walking out of the hotel. People still read the newspaper, but a lot of people are getting their information from social media, accessing through their phones, through tablets, through laptops, and then, the trend is getting more news from the internet rather than from print media. There's pros and cons to this. It's challenging because there is a lot of information out there that's misinformation. So in order to make sure you're giving accurate information, and like John said, making sure that your message bubbles to the top. So we're going to talk a little bit about hashtags and things like that later on, and how to make sure you grab the attention of your audience so that they're getting your message, not some other source of information.
And one of the things that occurred in the May floods of last year was those community disaster Facebook pages that started. Brazoria County was one of the ones that had a ton of followers, and so much information ended up being pushed out through that. I think at one point there were multiple Brazoria County Facebook recovery flood, long-term volunteer type pages, but you saw a lot of information being pushed through that, a lot of community engagement being pushed through that, but then, it even seemed like there was a couple of them, or that, and there was a question of whether or not the county was going to endorse the, or the community was going to endorse that Facebook page as the official source. So these are also, again, I think it's, you start seeing these questions that you never had to answer or even knew to ask because of the impacts of social media. And again, it's something to be aware of in all of disaster operations, but really in debris as well.
it presents a lot of challenges for PIOs now, for public information officers now, because there's so many people that can just start the message themselves that it's really challenging to monitor all of these different sources of information and then, make sure that the accurate information is going out. So now it's, your public information officer, they do the press releases and things like that, but they also probably have a couple people that are just monitoring social media to make sure that there's nothing crazy going on out there. So, during disasters, people are looking to hashtags and Facebook pages and Twitter feeds and those kinds of things for their breaking news. Again, concerns about this is the rapid spread of misinformation. Also, when we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you have a lot of different jurisdictional boundaries in this area. So, you may have different debris procedures for different neighborhoods, different jurisdictions, different cities, different, unincorporated county, those kinds of things. And so making sure that residents aren't following the wrong information about a different jurisdiction and their set-out procedures or their schedules and those kinds of things, and making sure that they understand where they live. We've run a couple of debris hotlines, and people call in, they'll find the phone number and they'll call in, and they don't really know that they don't live in, whatever city. They live in unincorporated county, which is going to be a different message. So there's challenges with that too, just making sure that there's when you do have different procedures for different jurisdictions, that's kind of coordinated. And also, it opens up the possibility for fraud and scams and things like that. So it presents another, another challenge to officials and for public information officers to monitor what information other groups are pushing out to make sure that your residents aren't getting, they're not becoming a victim of some sort of scam, those kinds of things. Again, just controlling, we talk a lot about this during exercises and post-disaster, how to verify and vet information and make sure that the source of the information is coming from, your public works department is telling you, this is what our procedures are, and then that gets pushed out. So, making sure all that's validated, coordinating through, contacts with the Emergency Operations Center and making sure all of that is vetted and there's a lot of different tools for crowdsourcing and getting information and providing support to disaster victims or disaster survivors. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it gets pretty complicated, especially when you have the public that's demanding, which one are we doing, which one are we using, or what's the official, or is the county going to come out and endorse this, or that kind of thing. So it gets a little complicated with some of those things, but it helps to show gaps in self-reporting. We talked a little bit about this in the last workshop. You're going to have communities that aren't going to come right out and say, they may not visit your disaster recovery center, or they may not be reporting out on debris issues. Using some of this social media is a great way to figure out where hotspots are, where you might not be getting, phone calls and things like that. So.
And for large jurisdictions, I know some folks from Harris County are here, and then even folks in Harris County over the webinar as well. So thank you for joining. But the data visualization piece of this, not only to show progress, but to actually capture the data, I think is an invaluable tool where, hey, tweet us a picture of your debris. I mean, that's all geolocated, especially in cutoff areas or remote areas, or because the last thing you want to do is there's this neighborhood or a pocket, and it's kind of tucked away because it's in a far area of your jurisdiction or of your county. Nobody really it's kind of off the beaten path, and you think you're free and clear of debris operations, you think you've got everything done, and then all of a sudden you call for the end of debris operations, and then this area hasn't been cleaned up. And then, things go up. People start sending pictures of, they haven't been to my area. That's happened. I am speaking from experience in situations where I've had this. So the ability to not only understand where your debris is coming from and, hey, put a picture of this on your Facebook page, or even, again, reporting out what the information is to your public. Hey, this is where we have trucks today. This is the progress that we've made. You've got some really nice tools at your disposal that we can use in future disasters. So with that, I think we're going to end our broadcast of Facebook Live, this edition, h-gac edition. Thank you all for joining us. And again, the webinar will be posted on the website. And so maybe we'll try to do this again sometime. But thanks again.
All right.
It looks like Becky's arms are kind of getting tired. So wait, real quick. So we got up to 10. That's pretty cool.
Whoa, what did they say? Now we're upset.
I know. Now did they like my power tie like Carl does?
Becky's not saying anything.
I know. Hey, that guy with the mic. Hold on. Let me give Becky a mic.
Yeah, the comment was that they thanked h-gac for worrying about and being concerned about and taking steps to help with communications during crises. That they said they thought that was very important. And we got a whole bunch of likes and a couple of loves.
Your mom was on,
made my
wasn't
day.
she?
I know my mom was on. No, my mom was not on. My wife. Thank you so much. Thanks to h-gac for letting us do this. I have just one quick story to tell you about Asian carp. I was at one of these company retreats, and we all told stories about what we did, where we came from, and most of us tuned out for secret. Everybody was on their phone, on the Facebook page or whatever. But this one young lady, she chose to talk about her project, which she highlighted something she did, but she really hammered home the fact that she was working with these Asian carp that was an invasive species in a particular lake, and I got to tell you, I remember it. I can't remember a thing about the other presenters, but I remember the Asian carp. Okay, and hopefully today that you'll use as one of your memory mechanisms the fact that we did Facebook Live here today, and things like that. It's some of these unique things that hopefully will stick with people, and again, if it's proper set outs of debris operations, or it's saying how to remove debris and have help.
You could show them. You could show them. Huh?
97 views.
See, data. I mean,
that's really cool. Honest to goodness. I mean, I'm glad we did this. Thank you for pushing that. And so that for those of you who couldn't hear that via webinar, just in the 20 minutes we did Facebook Live at 9:30 in the morning on a Thursday.
Which
all right?
we didn't previously advertise.
Which we didn't advertise, but we advertised 10 to 15 minutes before. Okay, so think about this real quick. So 15 minutes before, Becky posts a picture of the cover sheet of the webinar. Okay, 15 minutes later, we go Facebook Live. All right, h-gac has how many followers? You said, what did you say? 210. 1,600. We had 3 shares. Extended to 210. Okay, well, one of the people who shared was Cheryl Murgo. And that's awesome. So then other people in other cogs are sharing it. So this stuff goes viral pretty quick. I mean, I think it's important to have a real life example. So by the end of the day, we had 97 people had checked in or watched it at some point, and I think that's awesome. And I think that's just, again, in a debris operation, if you're going to do a public meeting, heck, public meeting part is probably the least important part. It's the ability to capture social media and push it out via Facebook pages. I mean, to get 97, I mean, think about it, the city of Houston, I mean, I don't want to get in my car to drive somewhere. And I mean, it's, unless you're going to have a bunch of different community meetings, this is something that you really may want to incorporate in your public information campaign, especially for free operations. So,
and if you've got an issue, if you've got a lot of residents that are doing their set out procedures incorrectly, you could do a tutorial for 5 minutes and show them exactly how to do it. So,
that's really, I hadn't even thought of that.
You know,
that's
so
an
that
awesome...
way they can see it. They can rewind it. They can, I guess it's not rewind anymore. Or
have
whatever.
Carl Dix out there saying, here is the knuckle boom.
Really
Don't stand under
right.
it. I don't know.
You could do a whole safety vignette on, you know.
That's not a bad play right there. I like that. I like that idea. We should try to do that next time. But no, I think great way. I mean, getting people to proper set out debris procedures, I think, is like 99% of the messaging and the challenge that we face in debris operations. And so to the extent we can inform people how to do that and where to get help if they need to get help and get the debris off to the right of way.
This isn't debris related, but it's waste related. You could do the same thing with recycling. Because how many times do people mess up, they put their plastic bags in, or whatever it is that they're doing incorrectly? They think they're doing it right. They're like, oh, yes, I recycled all my stuff, and then the whole batch is ruined, and the whole, you know, so you could do it with I would actually watch that, because I'm an over-recycler, and I'm ruining it for everybody. So
she's also an oversharer as well, so you got to watch out for her.
So now we'll just kind of talk about the different points in debris operations when it's a good idea to send out different messaging. So right now we're in this kind of preparedness phase where you can send out a lot of public information on, you know, routine maintenance, pre-hurricane season, you know, best practices, reaching, you know, doing some public information, some training, resident, you know, information on storm prep, those kinds of things, what to do, how to mitigate, you know, debris situations where they can, you know, do some pruning and some trimming and some maintenance now so that, you know, they don't have as big of issues. So you can do all that, you know, during your preseason. If you're in this kind of, you know, you've got your 5-day cone, there's immediate information that you can push out, you know, your response phase, there will be different information, like health and safety is going to be a big issue in those first response, first couple of days. People are going to try and go out there, they're going to try and clean up their debris, they're going to get, you know, there's down power lines, there's utility lines that are issues, you know, so making sure that they've got good health and safety tips immediately following so that, you know, safety is an issue. I was at a workshop a couple weeks ago, and they said that tree work has surpassed deep sea fishing in the most dangerous job in America. So,
like tree trimming.
Yeah.
I have heard that too, yes.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of, it is absolutely not a dirty job, but a deadly job. No, I've heard that it is a serious thing.
It is. And so we were at this workshop, and they did a whole thing on it was more geared towards tree workers and, you know, debris haulers, but the same thing goes for your residents. I mean, they're going to go out there and they're going to get that brand new chainsaw out, and they're going to have accidents. And there's statistics on, you know, most casualties and fatalities during disasters occur during the cleanup phase because they do things that are not smart. And there's, you know, again, there's utility lines and things like that. And so if you can get information out there faster, you can potentially save lives. To make sure that they're doing things in a safe way. And then in the recovery phase of this, you know, after lights and sirens have kind of died down and now we're getting into right-of-way collection, there's different information that you can get out there, coordination with volunteer organizations, the town hall meetings, the Facebook Live, you know, all of those kinds of things, the hotlines, you know, just letting them know when trucks are going to be in the area. and when, we're going to stop operations as well. So that final pass, those kinds of things. So different phases during the operation, you want to hit different information. So during preparedness, I don't know about Texas, but I know in Florida right now we've got a big information campaign about Zika and making sure that standing water and all these mosquito borne areas are mitigated. So prevention and maintenance regarding that. We've got a lot of during May and June we get a lot of information from solid waste and public works about tree trimming and routine maintenance and those kinds of things. So there's all kinds of information that you can push out during the preparedness phase, this phase, letting residents know where they are in the universe, so that they know they know which jurisdiction they live in, they know where to get information when there's a disaster. You're prepping them for potential disaster. And at each point, the preparedness phase, response, and recovery, at each point you can collect information about your residents. So collecting information about vulnerable populations, collecting information about areas where you're going to want to clear debris first, healthcare facilities, bus stops, like certain areas that, your vulnerable populations need to have access to so that they're not, further impacted by debris. So getting that information, coordinating with your volunteer organizations and finding out where some of those critical facilities are, you can, start to get that information now so that they become part of your priority routes and things like that later on. Pre-disaster impact, this timeline is geared towards, obviously a disaster where you've got some sort of notice, but this area, you're prone to floods and things like that where there is no notice. You don't have the 5-day cone to push, immediate health and safety information out and those kinds of things. But, for a hurricane, where you've got 5 days to get some targeted information out, you can do that. So, focusing on just last minute preparations, telling them, okay, if you didn't trim your trees and you didn't do any kind of maintenance, now's not the time to do it. You're going to have to wait. But just pushing information out about hazardous material awareness, making sure they've got enough supplies, all those kinds of things. Go ahead, John.
What I was going to say here in the pre-disaster impact, we really felt this phase even last week with Tropical Storm Cindy when it was bearing down on the Texas-Louisiana border, where you started to see the news media really start paying attention. And then we had the false alarm, which is a challenge of the pre-disaster impact phase, is that as many times, probably 10 times you actually start spinning up, and there's National Weather Service briefings and all this sort of stuff. There's going to be 9 false alarms and maybe 1 actual disaster. So that's a challenge I think that a lot of communities face, is pushing that information out during this period. So people think, you're the boy that cried wolf type of thing. So
right.
Something to think about there.
During the immediate response phase, again, focusing on the health and safety message out there so that you can mitigate or reduce the number of injuries and things like that. This is where, there's been some sort of disaster. You want to develop your hashtags and things like that now, so that you can push information out as soon as possible. Providing information on set-out procedures and things like that, letting the public know that this is coming, letting them know if you are going to be using contractors, because I know what my municipal solid waste trucks look like in my neighborhood every Tuesday and Thursday. So they're going to have to become acclimated with different trucks and different crews and things like that. So making sure that they understand who's going to be in their neighborhood and those kinds of things. And during recovery, notifying residents of the initial pass and subsequent passes. Like John said, you'll get ready for your final pass, and then all of a sudden you've got a group that said, nobody came to my street. So making sure you get the information out there. Getting your debris hotline set up. Like I said, we've run a couple of debris hotlines, and you get all kinds of comments and questions. Most of it is, when are you guys coming? Are you coming? Did you forget about me? So when you can push information out about emergency roadway clearance and priority areas and things like that, so that residents have an understanding of, okay, there's a timeline to this, there's a process to this, and they will get to me. And I don't know, Jen, do you have issues where you've got residents in gated communities, private roads, things like that, where they're looking to the county to say, hey, what about us? And really they should be talking to their homeowners association?
Right. And again, that goes back to the issue that we discussed last month, which was those individuals in gated communities that may or may not be eligible for FEMA reimbursement when it comes to debris removal operations for that county or city to pick up that debris. So you've got a subset, a population that, in general, if you're living in a gated community, a lot of those times it's pretty more affluent, probably in a lot of cases a lot more vocal. And again, I've never quite figured out whether or not it is that those gates are to keep those residents in or to keep people out. But regardless, you have these individuals who are on these private roads, and they're not part of the debris removal operation. And then you have other entities on orphan roads, and so you have a lot of people with a lot of questions just because of the way this is set up. You absolutely think of it as, hey, we're taking a truck, and that truck is going to go and pick up debris. John, how hard is this? How complex are you trying to make this? And I will answer that by saying I really am not trying to make that hard. It is just a very delicate, fragile debris removal operation. You have a lot of moving parts, and one of them happens to be roads and roadless layers. And again, I think put it simply is that you have people with a lot of questions, and you have to either push information or have that ability to receive the information from them. People are expecting that.
Mm-hmm. In addition to, your right-of-way collection or what the county is doing, you can also push information about, well, we might not be collecting it as the county, but there are some volunteer organizations that can help you out with this. You've got, stumps or something like that on your property. There may be some resources that you can tap into, and also giving them information to be wary of making sure they're getting permits and all those kinds of things that they need to get. So it's not just your right-of-way collection and telling them, this road or that road. It's also, providing some information about other solutions where they, if they're not on a county road or they're not, if they are in a gated community, giving them some sort of, well, we might not be picking it up, but here's some other solutions for you that might help with the burn a little bit. One of the things that we put together is this public information packet. So everyone should have gotten a copy of this. This is a draft.
Does everybody have it?
We kind of wanted to beta test it with the group to see what you thought. But basically, this is for PIOs. This is for this isn't a flyer that goes out to the community, but it's just at different phases during your disasters, different tools you can use to help guide through that process. So the first page is just kind of going through some ways to collect information from the public and ways to disseminate information going through each phase of the disaster. So preparedness, pre-disaster impact when you're in that warning area, immediate response, and recovery. And we follow this same kind of timeline throughout the whole packet. And it's color-coded so that, when it's chaos and you're in the EOC and you've got to put out a press release, hopefully this will help with some of that. On the second page, this kind of goes through the decision-making process. At different points during debris operations, as officials and your debris managers, you're going to have to make decisions about different programs either you are going to do or you aren't going to do. And based on those decisions, you'll have to put a press release out to inform the public. We are doing, we are activating contracted resources, or we're not. If it's not a declared disaster or those kinds of things where it escalates to a certain level, you may not do all of these programs. But making sure that you provide some information. There's some key considerations at different points of these press releases, things to consider. Kind of goes through the timeline of disaster operations. And really, what you can do is you can. This is going to be in an editable format. It's in a publisher file, but you could go through your debris management plan and go through your concept of operations. And for each different phase of your operations, you have a different point where you put out a press release. So you can edit this however you want. You know, in typical debris management plans, you activate the plan, you do your damage assessments, and then you activate your contractors or mutual aid resources, and then you start with emergency roadway clearance. So there's a press release in this packet that corresponds with that phase of your debris operations. And then the second phase is to, you know, get the public prepared for collection. So getting them set out procedures and timelines and things like that, and there's a press release that goes along with that. It's color-coded for a response. And then during recovery, some other key considerations, you know, letting them know about first pass, subsequent passes, those kinds of things. Information about different programs, if you're going to do a household hazardous waste program, if you're going to put, you know, a resident drop-off site, some of those different things that you may or may not do to support debris operations. There's a press release that goes with that. So this kind of takes you through that process, those decisions, those key decisions that are going to impact debris operations. And then there's a press release that goes along with it. So, like I said, this is a draft. I'm pretty excited about this little guy, though. Like, I think I would like to write an entire debris management plan in just colors and bubbles.
I think that's it right here.
It's a big challenge as a debris planner to do it with icons and bulleted information. But so take a look at it if, you know, if we're missing something or if you've got some suggestions. We're going to keep this in draft for a few weeks, and then we'll probably finalize it in a couple weeks and put it up on the website. So,
and this is by no means, again, I don't want you to take away here, oh, we just need to have 4 press releases. Okay, that is not meant to say that at all. It is more of a 4-phased approach, and that. I mean, that's something that you'd need to discuss and really talk about with your debris team after the disaster, how often you want to push out information and during what phases. Are there key milestones? And I'll tell you one key consideration is holidays, you know, Halloween holiday, Thanksgiving. I mean, especially during hurricane season, you have a fall storm. You know, you want to have press releases leading up to certain holidays or immediately after certain holidays that may coincide with different milestones, different events. We've dealt with that before. And then different phases of the operation, operational phases of the actual program, rather, they may require certain press releases that you want to inform the public on. Again, activating a contract, if you're encumbering $1 million or, you know, $5 million or $10 million or whatever that number may be, that may be something you want to push out to just inform the public how big is big and how bad is bad. So please flip through this. This was something that was a deliverable for this particular workshop, and there are a lot of key considerations that will go that flow throughout the entire document, but it's definitely within each phase is certain ones of those bubbles at the top.
I think it's also important when you're putting out some of this information is to provide the public with an update on what has been done so far. So usually you can get up-to-date information about cubic yards collected, roads that have been cleared, all those kinds of things. If you can push that information out, and you can say, well, we've collected 400,000 cubic yards of debris. A resident that's still kind of waiting on trucks to come through will say, oh, okay, so things are happening. I just have to be a little bit more patient. During response, during lights and sirens, people are so forgiving. They will wait for, you know, they're a lot more patient. When you get into the recovery phase, they get less patient, they get more demanding. So you know, that kind of wears off. So anytime you can provide them with an update to say, we've hit this area, or, you know, we're planning on doing this, or, you know, this is where we are, this is our status update. They just need a little bit of information. Sometimes they'll go a long way. So providing that status report or that update will be helpful.
All right. So we're almost to the half hour, but before we head to break, is there any questions, comments, any of the stuff that we've talked about that has really piqued your interest that you'd like to share with the group here or those online? Carl, you got anything? You have stuff written down. I'm looking. Here you go. I'm going to give you the mic.
Well, I don't want to steal the thunder from the rest of the presentation as I look forward a little bit. Yeah. The one thing that I can say is, look at the event type too, because that may dictate the type of messaging methodology you might use, how you push that information out. So, for example, let's say you have a tornado that might have spawned off of a hurricane there, and you have a very localized damaged area with a lot of C&D versus veg in some of the other areas. It's very easy to have choke points inside those tornado areas. It's something that we've done in the past in North Carolina and Alabama, where we utilize those choke points where you have police that might be manning that area into devastated areas to hand out flyers about how to properly segregate your debris instead of having to go door to door. Because I know you're going to have limited resources following an event, so you're going to have to make do with what you have. Choke points are a great way of doing that. Another localized event that I could see choke points would be flooding. If you have very localized flooding in a certain area, you might be able to cordon off one area where residents are coming through, and then you hand out flyers. So, the event type may dictate the type of message delivery that you might have.
Awesome. Great point. I think, there's something to be said for just good old-fashioned, elbow grease, doing things the old-fashioned way, just going door to door. While social media is definitely a thing today, there is no replacement for face-to-face communication and getting that information out.
It's also reliable too. I mean, if you have a police officer that's handing you a flyer about debris, it's pretty legit. So whereas some things that you may see on Facebook as a consumer, I might be, I wonder if that's really true. I've got to back that up with a second resource. But I think if a cop is handing me information about debris, I'm gonna take his word for it. So.
Perfect. No, thank you. Okay, so by the official HGAC clock in the back of the room here, we're going to get back together at 8:40. So at this time, we got some tacos back there, great green salsa, fruit, some pastries. Restrooms are across the hall in the back. And when we get back, Francisco Sanchez with Harris County Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is going to be talking to us about his perspective on public information. So
9:40.
9:40.
Yep.
Excuse me, 9:40. I'm on Mountain Time. All right, good deal. All right. I think we're going to get started again. For those of you who are on the webinar, we are going to have a guest speaker today. We're going to have Francisco Sanchez from Harris County Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. He's going to be talking about Harris County OEM's public information perspective and how it's evolving, how public information shifts from response to recovery, and then just general lessons learned from 2015, 2016 floods. And so with that, I wanted to welcome Francisco. So here you go.
Well, John gave me some homework with 3 questions I had to come back and report on. Thank you all very much for coming and including us as part of this from Harris County. From our perspective, when it comes to public information, communication is the single most important factor in determining where our response to disaster is going to fall. And that very wide spectrum between failure and success. And as we sit here and talk among ourselves about what we do in the background for debris management, during the course of an incident, we can do a great job at communicating with one another, doing a great job in delivering those services. In the background, we can win that incident. But if we haven't communicated effectively with the public about what's happening, why it's taking so long for something to get around to your street, we actually, what we think is a successful incident turns into a bad incident from the public perspective. And really, the grade that matters most is the one that we earn in that glaring light of public scrutiny. We can think we did well, but if the public doesn't think we did well, then that can be problematic. And I think we've been in emergency management long enough, and a firefighter long enough to know that I've seen this when we've really screwed up the incident, and the public thinks we did great because we must have did well. To the other side of that, where we've actually done it well, but haven't communicated that effectively to the public, and so they think we did poorly. And things have changed when it comes to information. 10 years ago, we were making high impact, high consequence decisions in a condensed time frame with almost no information, just our guts and our experience to guide us. Fast forward to today, and we're still making high impact, high consequence decisions in a condensed time frame, but with too much information. But the blind spot is still the same, information. The challenge is with all that information that's out there, open data, to all these sources of information we now get, how do we find those bits of nuggets for us to be able to make solid operational decisions? And how do we find those nuggets of information that we know we need to communicate to the public to get our message out? And so information still continues to be a challenge. And we try to be cognizant from our perspective of the changing dynamic of what's required for public information. When I went to the University of Houston quite some time ago, I almost got kicked out of my first journalism class. The professor said, "What does the First Amendment mean to you?" And I raised my hand. I said, "Freedom of the press belongs to those that can afford it." And I almost got kicked out. The professor's not there because I would go prove him actually where I was right back then. But back then, you paid someone like me a lot of money to try to fix a problem if you had it by the noon newscast. If I didn't get it right for you by noon for my client, I'd get it right for you by the afternoon newscast. And if that didn't work, I'd try to get it right for you by the evening newscast. If I still couldn't get it right, you need to hire someone better. But today, we're in a 24-hour news cycle that's really driven largely by the fact that you don't have to be a Hearst Corporation or Turner Broadcasting to really drive a message. Everybody here that has a cell phone or some kind of digital device, you are now a content producer. You now contribute to media, and you can make a story go viral, sometimes on purpose and sometimes entirely by accident. Those are the kinds of things to be very cognizant of. And it's really, we live in interesting times when it comes to communication. I think we really are living at a very historical time in the ability to, when it comes to generating information and how it impacts the world around us as communications professionals and public service. And I don't think, I think probably only the other 4 times that we've done this in the world. It's the first time the printing press, right? So, removal type and oil-based things. You now have the Bible, you now have education, which turned Europe on its head because people now knew things, people burned, fortunes were made, kingdoms fell. The second time I think that happened would have been the telephone and telegraph. People think texting is new. People were texting around the world back in the telegraph, and you could actually exchange information. But the interesting of the first part was when it came to the printing press, whatever I printed, people assumed to be true, right? So it's one person communicating to many. And that may have taken you weeks or months or years to get that newspaper. I mean, people talk about fake news now. Benjamin Franklin had the printing press, so he could say whatever he wanted. He repeatedly ran stories that his competitor had died. And his competitor was quite alive. And so when people see his competitor, they just freak out. But, you know, it's, again, that speaks to one to many. And so I think that has disappeared in terms of it used to be when me, as an official spokesperson for organization, would be pretty much the only entrusted source. Now that has changed. The telephone and telegraph allowed one-on-one communication, but still not being able to communicate to the masses and the masses being able to communicate back. The third time that happened was recorded video and sound, so records and movies and those kinds of things develop also changed the world, right? We could see what's happening in other parts of the world. We were exposed to arts and culture and other information. Again, education, people get their message out. But again, that one person that created that record or that movie could communicate their message to the world, but you had no way to talk back to that person or challenge that person to say. Then you have the electromagnetic spectrum, radio and television broadcasting. But again, if I had a radio show or a television show, it was what I decided to put on. And you would receive that with no opportunity to come back and challenge me, correct that information, or offer a different perspective. Now we're in the digital age. It's that new revolutionary period where you can talk back to me. You can challenge what I'm saying to the emergency public information officer. You can challenge and question what I'm doing. And I'm likely to be the official source. There's no guarantee that I'm the most trusted, someone with a better following in the space, someone that has cultivated those relationships. Are people that can sometimes be the folks that are actually driving a message. So we need to be very cognizant of that as we deal with communications from our side. We have to, from our perspective, we look at three different audiences. Our elected officials to be one set of information, our decision makers need to decide, do we evacuate, don't evacuate. They need to know what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and what decisions might they have to make. Our second set of audience is partners and stakeholders like people in this room. They also need to know what's the best case, worst case scenario, but you need more information about where we are in the planning process. Harris County itself is 1,777 square miles, 54 fire departments, 56. Somehow we got 2 new departments over the last year and a half. I don't know where they're at or what they're doing. We've gone 54, 56 fire departments, more than 125 law enforcement agencies, and 34 cities. And among that, you've got the city of Houston, which is about to be the third largest city in the country. You take the unincorporated part of Harris County, and that would be the fifth largest city in the country. By the time you get to the next census, more people will be living outside the Beltway than inside the Beltway. And when we deal with a regional response, again, we're just talking about Harris County, not even the h-gac region. That's even more complicated. But how do we coordinate that? And I know that you will believe me when I tell you that with 34 mayors, 56 fire chiefs, and more than 125 police chiefs, there are no egos in the room, right? When we're trying to make decisions as a group. And so our job is to sort of make that's the complexity of that. And our job is to really coordinate, facilitate that. And it's not so much, well, the county judge is in charge of Homeland Security and Emergency Management of the county by 418 of the Texas Government Code. Command and control is really this kind of myth out there. It doesn't really exist. The judge can't really tell Chief Acevedo what to do for Houston. Even inside the county, all our constables are duly elected officials with their own constituencies. It's really not so much command and control. I think the 14 years of experience I have in emergency management tells me it's more of a coordinate and cajole. We need to sort of work together to figure out how we do that as a region. So for us, information is important in sharing us for those kind of three different audiences to at least make sure we're moving in the same direction. Communication for us, while it's public, we have all those three audiences. And the way we've done that is really invest a lot in what we call the Regional Information Center. Harris County, while that's under sort of my purview, we've got 4 staff now that are dedicated to that. And while they're paid for by Harris County, they really are considered regional assets. We've got the Ready Harris website, which is where we list all of our county partners in the region, or all of our county offices of emergency management, our local office of emergency management here, cities in the area that have websites, transportation, law enforcement, fire, center point, utilities, school closings, all those things are there. So when we push that out, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that TransStar, where all of this happens, we see the county judge and the mayor during a disaster speaking together. There's a challenge and an opportunity. The opportunity for us is what we want to say gets out there. Media's there, they're broadcasting live. The challenge, and we learned this the hard way during RETA, as I did, is that we tend to drown out the message of our local partners and have a hard time getting their message out. If you're Missouri City, and you've got a half public information officer, right? Someone that happened to miss the meeting, so they would designate the PIO for anything that happens in the future. That happens. That's a reality. How do they get their message out? We tend to drown them out. So the regional joint information process is how do we build processes, technology, and things to be able to make sure they're a resource to our partners and not just drowning our message out. The second question, homework question from John, was I think sort of the response from response to recovery. And the biggest one of those, I think, is the complexity of it and the timing of it. It's very temporal. So it's very easy. We're also the 10th largest media market. So while what the mayor says doesn't stop at the city line, or what the county judge says doesn't stop at the county line, we're the 10th largest media market. That reaches much, even down as far south as Victoria. So that's relative. This is a couple of challenges. It's relatively easy to manage pre-disaster. Largely the messages are the same. You know, you might get into some nuance when it comes to who evacuates, who doesn't, but storm preparedness, whether it's flooding or hurricanes or tornadoes or ice storms, those kinds of things be the same. That changes very dramatically when you go to the preparedness and response side to recovery, because that becomes very granular. What is true for a northeast section of Harris County isn't necessarily true for what's true in the southwest portion of Harris County. Debris contracts are different from city to city. We have, an overarching debris contract in Harris County. But even then, it's complex. Some neighborhoods, and the media loses interest in doing those live news conferences. So when you've got a boil water notice in one community, how do you communicate that when the media doesn't want to run with it? How do you communicate something that's different for Oak Forest neighborhood versus Acres Homes? Those are the complexities that come into play. And sometimes you also start getting to the point where that's the media sort of gone from, and they have the right to ask these questions. So, John and I were talking about the mayor's news conference yesterday about the recycling contract in the city. It's a very complex contract. I can't speak to it. I don't work for the city. I don't know it. But this is also at the time when the media starts going from preparedness to sort of how does the response work? Why is this contract like this? We've got a resident that's complained that haven't had their debris picked up. It's another looking at contract specifically. Explain how this complex structure is the way it is. When our priority still at the time is, we need to worry about that later. Glad to answer those questions, but right now the important message is this. And so the complexities of that start to get a little more challenging. And the lesson we've learned is having the right people in the room. We tend to sort of, lesson we learned the hard way during night is we had everybody in the Regional Joint Information Center working hard to get the message out, the most important message out. Well, in that room are also people like public health and PID and those folks that we probably should have said, y'all stay home. You've got the heavy lifting to do after landfall. But by then they were tired out. They had already worked the week in advance of Hurricane Ike, and when their time came up to be the lead, they were exhausted. And we certainly set up to help them. So we've learned a little bit better in that planning process to make sure we have the right folks in the right room at the right time. That's what we learned in that regard. When it comes to recovery, also, I know it's mostly supporting, but our nonprofit partners are just an instrumental part of that. And as emergency managers, the public safety folks, we tend to get a lot of the kudos for how well a response works sometimes. But the people that really are doing the heavy lifting, the folks that really are instrumental to how successful recovery is, are those case managers, those nonprofit organizations, those people that are working in debris folks and public infrastructure folks that are really working the long-term recovery side of that. We just barely closed out Hurricane Ike about a year and a half ago. Actually, I think we had the FEMA administrator here. I think we got one project that's left to get checked off on, and we'll be done with that. But on the terms of the personal assistance, individuals that are folks out there, the last home was finally rebuilt about a year and a half ago. The flooding from 2015 to 2016 will be a long-term project. We've barely got community development block grants that are coming down, and those are folks that really have to be in the long term. And it's interesting to see what happens if you got a case manager that's paired up with a senior citizen that was impacted by limited resources and trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. And that case manager is their best friend. They've got resources coming, they've got some immediate help, but then it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the road and something still hasn't happened. And it goes from their best friend to now it's who they call and yell at on a daily basis. But the case manager's patient. And then you've got 6, 7 years later when it's finally closed out and they're the best friend again. So those really kind of what the creditors do when it comes to being able to get our community back on track. And the lessons learned of 2016 flood, I think one of the biggest challenges, something else we learned from Cindy, since Hurricane Ike, we really hasn't had any presidency declared disasters. We've got more than 1 million people here since Hurricane Ike. We've also had a lot of turnover when it comes to emergency management professionals. Even in our shop, we've grown some. We have, when it comes to creating sort of the resources for recovery, our nonprofits are strapped. They're dealing with 4 presidential declared disasters, 20 months, 2015 and 2016 floods. They're beyond their capacity. So we have brought on a recovery specialist that will help them refine that planning process, improve that collaboration, so that our nonprofit is focused on serving the community and getting them back to some sense of normalcy. But we've dedicated the resources for this specialist to build that planning and to do that to help empower our nonprofits for the next time. But part of that challenge is we also have new people that have not really faced some kind of real scenario. So Tropical Storm Cindy tested some of that. People that haven't responded to a hurricane before, luckily it missed us. But I think that was the biggest challenge, is having a real world scenario that our folks that are new to this business, are new to their roles, were able to sort of experience that a little bit. And it's interesting to see some of those things really get stressed out. And some of us that have been here for a while will look at that, you might get some rain. But it's interesting sort of that kind of being battle tested, that's probably one of the best lessons for recently, 2016 again. Debris recovery, recovery in general are one of those things that we simply do not test enough. And we test them in exercise, and that's fine and dandy, but recovery in the real world that's the most difficult part of emergency management. And the good news is we don't have to test in the real world very often in a real world scenario, but the bad news is we're going to have to do that again at some point. That's the reality of living along the Gulf Coast. Water, whether it is from the sea or from the sky, is probably our worst natural enemy. But at some point, we have to learn those lessons the hard way. Glad to answer the question. Man, coffee has to get in you.
Oh, great. Sorry. So speaking of social media and misinformation being broadcasted live, so one of the challenges really is how do you get those nuggets of information that are valuable? And that's still a learning process. There's a lot of software that helps sort of do that and capture that. One of the things we're trying to get better at is how do you vet what's coming from where, and really sort of understanding the tone. And I think we have to understand too. Often emergency managers want to look at social media strictly for the public affairs side of the house. But I think there's 2 elements of social media. One is obviously the public information side, and the other one is the operational side. And I don't think you put the operational side in the public affairs shop. Certainly there are folks on the public information side that can teach folks on the operational side how to utilize social media. But someone on the operations side needs to be looking at, all right, we're seeing a trend in tweets in this geographic area about flooding, this area not so much. How do we use that to get a real world sort of snapshot? And you have to understand it is just a snapshot. And we're trying ways to do that. I think it's an issue we've been struggling with. We had a national dialogue on it. I actually led an effort for the FCC to figure out how we utilize wireless emergency alerts. The next phase is how do we re-envision wireless emergency alerts beyond the current capabilities. One of the things that we hope to improve is wireless emergency alerts are the ones that get the thunderstorm warning, flood warning, things like that you didn't sign up for, but your phone does a weird vibration, weird noise. We're trying to figure out ways on how to improve that, to be able to geo-target that a little better so that someone in Northeast Harris County doesn't get a warning for folks in Southeast Harris County. Those still need to be worked out. We're trying to, our recommendation is to improve that from 90 characters to 360 characters. People need to know what's happening, where it's happening, what to do to stay safe, and where to go for more information. In terms of capturing real-world data and how do you actually get nuggets of information that are valuable, we're hoping to improve that from just a one-way communication to a two-way communication, so that if we have an idea that there's something that's actually happening, right, so maybe we did see those trends in Northeast Harris County, and we draw a polygon there and message people by those wireless emergency alerts and get information feedback from them to validate information and see how big is big, how bad is bad. So a lot of that is really creating processes and new ways to leverage technology to be able to do that. Mike?
Are you guys using Nextdoor at all?
Yes, good. Sorry. Excellent, because when we were talking about how do you communicate, that actually was a thought I had back there. So when it comes to collaboration, whether you are a contractor or a jurisdiction or an HGAC type, one of the things that we have done at the Harris County Office of Homeland Security Management is develop a kind of robust capability to use multiple platforms and use the platforms that are particularly useful for the information we're trying to get out. And Nextdoor is very valuable. So Nextdoor for debris management is actually going to be a very valuable resource. So we talked about the lack of media interest in terms of getting very granular information out for a particular neighborhood when they're dealing with the largest, they're dealing with a media market and what's of interest. We've got those kind of resources that we make available to our partners. So if there's a particular debris issue that's happening in Precinct 3 or in a certain community, we can utilize our Nextdoor and target that by neighborhood, so that we could say your neighborhood, you can expect debris pickup on Tuesday. This neighborhood over here, you can expect it on Wednesday. And we're trying to utilize those things to geo-target information a little bit better. We certainly don't want to do, and that is how do we utilize the platforms that are best for that and walking that very fine line of what's intrusive and what the people sign up for, those kinds of things. And so Nextdoor and those kinds of social media capabilities that allow us to do that is going to be very effective. And while Nextdoor is one of those new technologies that allows us to do that, we also can't forget people that different ways of getting communication. I think, I can tell you all day to be prepared, but well, this room's a little different, right? So you'll probably be prepared. My sister and my mom, on the other hand, despite for what I do for a living, whatever. Junior's yapping again about something, right? So, but who do they trust? They trust the little old lady that runs the Civic Club. And so one of our new projects is how do we go back to, yes, we're on Nextdoor, we're on social media, we've got an app. And by the way, we'll announce it today, so I may as well tell you now. We've received an award for the Ready Harris app right now, where people can build their own personal plan, get push notifications and things like that. But for all that said and done, there's people that will listen to the little old lady that runs the Civic Club before they listen to me or anything on social media. And so while we have done this full sprint to make sure that we're as technology savvy as we can be, we're also going back to make sure that people, that we always have those other ways to communicate and build those relationships. So someone's amplifying our message, and we have those other ways to get information out in a very geographic area. Yes, ma'am.
you talked about coordinating with the nonprofit community. And if I understood correctly, you said that in sort of the pre-planning phase, you've done something a little different, or you're doing more preparation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So one of the lessons learned from the 2016 floods is that, well, we have a concept of recovery, nonprofits had their concept of recovery, but there was a lack of a sort of unifying plan to do that. And we all kind of understood structurally how it was supposed to happen, but there wasn't a whole, not much of that really hadn't been condensed to writing yet. And a large part of that, I think, looking back at how that developed during Hurricane Ike, again, people were exhausted. People have done a lot of recovery work. Our nonprofit organizations, they felt, and this isn't any criticism, it's the reality of just simply what happened is we're spent. I mean, we were severely impacted by Ike. Our case managers are done. We probably won't have to deal with this for a while. And if we had to handle just one flood in 2015, kind of would have been fine, but we handled 2 floods in 2015. And then we got the 2 major floods in 2016. That's not even including the Halloween flood that happened between the spring floods of 2015 and 2016. And so part of what we're doing now is everything that we've done, let's capture how we can improve it. Let's capture a planning process so that let's hope it's years from now before we have to deal with that again, but that case manager might be gone. That disaster, I'll just pick on Matt. I don't think he's going anywhere, but let's say Matt Johns at the Catholic Centers, Catholic Charities gets, someone steals him to go do something better at a better pay. Will there be a plan that a successor can take a look at it? Here's how it works, or will that knowledge go with Matt? And so we committed to have a recovery specialist we hired immediately after the 2016 floods, or in the fall, to work with our nonprofits. And so she's currently, Stevie Franks is chairing the nonprofit, the recovery committee, attends the BOAD meetings regularly. And so she's kind of helping to manage the recovery side of it. And we're sort of the government liaisons to try to get everything, so make sure our nonprofits have what they need from us. But also for that planning process, how do we put that to writing? As a matter of fact, it's a priority for us. I'm actually meeting with her next week. As someone that got tapped to lead the initial recovery effort for each of those 4 things, one of the challenges I found myself in was I would have liked to have known this before that. It's one of the things we're going to be working on because the nonprofits, and I can't speak to those, they've got a unique set of needs that our specialists are more aware of than I am. I know from the government side, from the planning process, I found it very frustrating when I would be at a recovery meeting and I would learn, for example, from FEMA that, there's this resource that's available to you and it takes 3 months to get here. Well, I needed to know that 3 months ago so that I could award it then if I know it's going to take 3 months to get here. Things are slow to move. And so those are the kinds of things that one of the things that hopefully is built into that plan is what I call the menu. What can I order from the county? What can I order from the state? What can I order from the federal resources? And what can I order from either nonprofits or other partners and stakeholders? So that as I see, here's the challenge that we're facing, then I can, someone in charge of recovery, look at the menu. What on this menu can help me address that? And how much is it going to cost me? And how long is it going to take to get here? So that I can make more informed decisions. But if I anticipate that's going to take, and this issue is probably going to become this issue, let me order that now rather than later. Because I can always tell them to hold off. I can't get them in here faster, though. Any other questions? Well, thanks. Easy.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Sanchez. I think a lot of the themes that we're going to hopefully echo a lot of the themes that he had focused on as we move through the next components of our discussion, and which is that there are a lot of challenges, especially as you heard Francisco say, there's a lot of challenges in recovery versus preparedness. There are a ton of issues that we have to deal with in public information, whether it's population demographics, multitude of apps and information sources that are out there. Heck, just government distrust as he talked about. I wrote it down, which is, it is so, everybody thinks it is the message that is the most important piece, but it is probably more important to have the right messenger, whether that's a mayor or a county judge or someone from a priest from the local church that has that message. And I think FEMA is learning that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But really a lot of challenges to overcome during debris operations.
So we've got the, different demographics in different areas. We've got, a lot of, there's a ton of studies on millennials versus baby boomers and how you bring these two groups together and how you provide information and communication. This is the AARP website. This is a picture from their website. So there's all kinds of information and all kinds of studies that have been done on, how to reach these two groups. But honestly, if you have, we were talking earlier about this like three-pronged approach to public information. If you're using social media, if you're doing door-to-door and you're talking to priests in the civic center and whoever, you're going to reach these different groups. There are some challenges with making sure that the right message gets out and those kinds of things. The other piece of this is making sure that your social media matches the same information that your priest has. So making sure that everybody is talking from the same sheet of music. And actually, I wanted to ask that question before he left, but it's really hard to make sure your call takers have the list of bulleted information that they're supposed to say. And, it's the same information that's going out to whatever Nextdoor app or, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I'm a little sensitive to it after being in Albany, Georgia. And we really tried to work with the elected officials to provide them some sort of guidance because they were great communicators. They really were in getting out there and spreading the word. The only problem was sometimes they got dates wrong on when third pass was going to be done, which caused a lot of headache on our part because we had to change operational plans and things like that. There wasn't seamless communication internally to identify what those dates were and then push it out through multiple avenues. So making sure that across all spectrums that we're keeping those messages very consistent.
I recently did a full-scale exercise with a community. We were doing a full-scale exercise at the airport. It's the largest airport in the universe. I don't want to give it away which one it is, but it's a giant airport. You all have probably all flown through it. And somebody told the police chief the wrong date of this exercise. We had apparatus going, we had flyers that were going out, we had tons of moving parts that went along with this exercise. And we were closing down a portion of the most used airport in the world. And because somebody told the elected official the wrong date of the exercise, all of that had to be moved a day. So making sure that they have the right information. I mean, it costs a ton of time and a ton of effort and all that stuff, and then we had to go back to the airport and say, we got the date wrong. So it's just making sure it will mess up all of your operations in order to accommodate some of those mix-ups. So coming up with those bulleted points to make sure that, whatever's being communicated out through door-to-door communication or elected officials or whatever, all of that is consistent across the board. There's also, we have talked about this in other workshops, making sure that whatever information you're pushing out is in multiple formats, be it, different languages, accessible for vision impaired, hearing impaired, dual sensory impaired, making sure that you're able to reach the entire community to the best effort possible. I'm sure there's hundreds of different languages that are spoken in the Houston area. So making sure, you're not going to be able to put every press release out in every language, but making sure that you can hit as many as possible, coordinating with different groups to push that information out. Public schools is a really good way to do that. They provide a lot of information in a lot of different formats. So if you can coordinate with them to say, we need to also inform the different neighborhoods of different setup procedures and those kinds of things. Coordinating with public schools, they've got the resources to help format things in different languages and in different formats that are accessible to vision impaired and hearing impaired. So also reaching out to volunteer organizations. After the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, there was they reached out, the Recovery Center reached out to different different volunteer organizations to make sure that they had, different groups represented there to accommodate language barriers and things like that. So we had multilingual volunteer organizations and things like that to help with that. So anyway, you can reach out to different communities, different organizations to help with getting the message out. It's going to help in those pockets of neighborhoods that, maybe didn't get the message through, a press release or things like that. There are some challenges with urban versus rural. So we talked a little bit about government trust and those kinds of things and making sure that you can get information to different areas. We're also, working in some rural communities in Georgia and trying to get information from farmers and things like that. It's hard. They're sort of like, we're fine. We don't need to talk to you about anything. We got this. And we're like, well, we just kind of want a little bit of information to see, how you're impacted or what the issues are. So, and it goes both ways in urban areas as well. You'll have groups of people that just don't want to go to a disaster recovery center. They don't want to talk to a FEMA representative. They don't want to talk to whoever. So finding someone in the community that they can, either ag extension or whatever it is to communicate whatever you need to, information and collect that information. I know, John, you had some things to say about this challenge.
I do, and I'll put this in the context of really long-term recovery. And I know we've talked about this in the last workshop, which is that a lot of this data that's collected on the front end is used quite extensively for the long-term recovery dollars. You heard Francisco mention that Harris County is just embarking in the long-term recovery process, as well as housing and community development for the city of Houston. And a lot of the data that the people in DC are using to make allocations of dollars are FEMA individual assistance data, small business administration data, but there are those people who don't necessarily buy into that, and there's some government trust issues, and even in debris removal operations, there are these people out there that they, don't trust that, that Apple is taking your thumbprint, or maybe there is an individual that has a little sticky note on her little camera on the top of her laptop.
I don't like the camera. I think it's weird.
The government's going to come get her. She's got it right there. See that orange thing? But what I'll say is that there is that messenger piece of this, and I don't care if it's rural populations or urban populations. There is a challenge of reaching them, and it does require you to think about who the best person to message that information, even if it's debris removal. Even if it's signing up for FEMA individual assistance or SBA, you've got to take that into consideration. Working with ag extensions, NRCS, different organizations, something to think about.
We're going to talk a little bit about this in the case study section of this, but right now in Dougherty County, Georgia, we are using the debris pickup data to demonstrate the actual disaster damage, because disaster damage generates a lot of broken stuff, and so wherever you had broken stuff, you're going to have debris, and it shows the best picture of where it's impacted, because it's assigned a GIS, it's assigned a location, an address. I mean, you can show this very clearly on a map, exactly where all this debris was picked up, and it shows you exactly where the damage is. So you overlay that on where the swath of the damage or the flood zones or wherever it is, and you can paint that picture. And we're using that debris data to tell the story of what actually happened in Dougherty County, because they have a large population of people that weren't eligible for different programs, or they didn't self-report. There was no paper trail of the actual victims of the storm, survivors of the storm. But there was a debris pile there, and that's how we can show it. And that's what we're going to use in order to appeal for more for different grant programs like CDBG-DR and things like that. So whereas the FEMA IA data isn't showing a huge need, the debris data is showing exactly what happened. So that's one way that we're using that. Again, the self-reporting is hard in certain areas. Some people, they're not going to go to a disaster recovery center, or your disaster recovery center doesn't get set up for 2 or 3 weeks. Well, you know, people are gone by then. So you can use social media in order to fill that gap and figure out, you know, people will post it, but they might not go to a FEMA, you know, disaster recovery center and fill out all the paperwork and go through that arduous process. You know, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, trying to figure out what's real and what's fake, because you can get spun up over something that was posted and then it turns out that it's a non-issue. So there can be a lot of wasted efforts into different rabbit holes, I guess. So
I absolutely think definitely has some challenges with as a source of supplemental data. I absolutely think it is a must-have. I do it when I look at when I'm looking at a disaster in a market that we have a contract with an individual or an organization, and I don't want to seem like I'm overreacting, rather, and I will look at the mainstream media, different websites, and then use Twitter, Facebook pages to try to validate that, because the last thing I want to do is
overreact.
Is overreact.
Like
yeah.
when, yes, you left your colleagues in Tampa when you overreacted.
Yes, I've done that before. I've left people, but what I will tell you is that that it is it's something you have to incorporate into, especially during that damage assessment process.
Mm-hmm. Right now I'm following, I think it's Albany Relief and Recovery right now on Facebook just to document their volunteer hours, because they've got this huge volume of volunteer hours and they're showing it through different hashtags. So that's one way I'm using Facebook to figure that out. Root Ball Roundup. This is another, so there's certain programs that, you know, debris programs that the county is providing, or city is providing, but then there's other programs that are led by volunteer efforts. So it's not just the contracted resources or the county's resources. There's also, you know, you got to communicate Root Ball Roundup or whatever it is that different groups.
Crisis cleanup, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah.
I was going to say, who makes up hashtags? Is there I forgot to ask Francisco, or if anybody else knows, the official process of creating these hashtags. Is it just your city name and the word strong? Is that just what people tend to gravitate to?
Boston Strong.
Boston Strong. Oh, everybody's strong. Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's great, but it's kind of been used quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a little hashtag a little later. So, couple of different tools that you can use. You know, we talked about the three-pronged approach, I guess. One is digital, one is, you know, face-to-face, and one is, you know, print media. But planning a great outreach meeting, make sure you've got enough space, make sure you maybe bring some food and some drinks and things like that. If you bring food, people will show up. And
just look what we did, and we do every time.
Are those cookies?
Cookies at the next break. We're about to take a break, but yes, don't worry, they're there.
But, you know, if you're going to do a town hall meeting, it's a great way to communicate to the public, especially if you're going to set up a Facebook Live or something like that so you can reach a lot of people. Get the invitation out as soon as you can. You know, make sure, again, you've got enough space for everybody, kind of gauge the public, see how many people are going to be there. Be prepared to answer tough questions. So I don't think there'll be like the red cards and the green cards, or that was the thing that was big at a lot of town hall meetings recently, where people were holding up signs and red cards and things like that. But be prepared, have somebody up there that can answer the questions, and they're armed with accurate information to push back out. So they're not flailing up there giving out just random information, that they're sticking to a script that was customized by the people that are doing debris operations. So make sure that they've got, you know, that they've got the right information. Put somebody up there that's going to be a strong voice, that's going to be a trusted voice, and see if you can get somebody to donate food and snacks. I know in Florida, we've got Publix does a lot of donated food and things like that after, they're one of our grocery stores. After disasters, they donate a lot of food and things like that. So see if we can get somebody to donate food and beverages, but non-alcoholic beverages, keep everybody calm and fed and blood sugar stabilized.
A few other things to the public meetings, you know, debris. We have seen clients that just do debris public outreach meetings. We've highlighted that in the past. I find it more valuable to incorporate debris as a part of an overarching recovery public outreach meeting. I also recommend having a separate area that has tables for each of the departments within your organization so that people can ask questions afterward. No, not everybody, well, in fact, myself, I don't particularly like asking questions in front of a large group. And so to have that area, to have a debris management table and have it staffed with people that are knowledgeable is a very, very good way to pass that accurate information to the public and let them be your voice. The other thing I wanted to highlight on public outreach meetings is the fact that whether invited or uninvited, your congressional delegation may show up at these things. Particular Congress members love to say a few words and communicate their point across. So be aware that you might have some special guests, invited or uninvited, which incorporates a little bit of element of surprise to your public information meetings. I've been involved, and again, I'll go back to the Facebook Live piece, which isn't a bad way to weave in to your debris, to your public outreach meetings and have people there virtually.
When doing door-to-door communication, we were talking a little bit about this. How are you going to staff to do door-to-door communication? So one thing you can try to do is get an idea of the, oh, I'm sorry, did we have a question?
I have a question about where that thing got that shirt right there. I have a question where Cookie Monster was.
Typically,
I'm sorry.
I do the graphics for these presentations, but I didn't do it this time, and I didn't see that. That's hysterical. So,
sorry.
So what you want to make sure is that you're targeting, you've got a targeted area, because you don't want a lot of wasted resources going around to different. So you can monitor social media, figure out where those hot spots are. Look at your GIS data and your weather, your weather warnings and things like that, to figure out exactly where you need to dedicate resources to go door to door. I know in emergency management, if there's silence from an area that is probably impacted, that's kind of a bad sign. So you're probably going to have to put people out there on the boots on the ground. But finding the right people to go door to door, or who's going to be representing your organization or your agency, making sure they're not, showing up in the Cookie Monster t-shirt. And then,
you might be visiting people who are wearing
right,
Cookie
and that's
Monster
fine.
t-shirts.
You're going to visit homes, you can, but got a snazzy cardigan on too. So, but making sure that they've got the right information that they're pushing out. So again, that bulleted list of points to make sure that they're hitting either, this is the correct dates, the correct programs. You might not be doing household hazardous waste and C&D. You might just be doing vegetative debris, or you might just be doing a particular debris program. And so making sure they've got the right information. They're representing your organization, your agency, respectfully, and being respectful of the disaster survivors as well. It's tough being out there door to door. It's hot. It's a tough job going, being out there and hitting the pavement. But these are disaster victims, so you've got to make sure there's a little bit of training and those kinds of things, so that they're respectful and cognizant of the situation, regardless of the Cookie Monster t-shirt.
And I think very much, and this may be a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised, is not only clear, accurate, and consistent information, but just consistent appearance. And that's probably 95%. Whether it's everybody's wearing yellow T-shirts that say debris removal or they're properly identified. I mean, health and safety perspective, you're going door to door onto someone's property. I think is it sometimes could be a scary thought, and because you never know what's behind that door, and then just making sure that people understand that they are presentable is an important piece, and that they're properly equipped with water, food for the day, some of those things that they are properly hydrated, because it is hot in Houston after hurricanes and in the summer.
You bring up a good point about health and safety and doing a little bit of training before you send people out to go door to door. When I worked for the state of Florida, after some tornadoes hit Central Florida, I actually live in Lake County, so I will pick on Lake County. I had to go door to door to let people know that we were going to be doing debris operations on dirt roads. They were county maintained roads, but the residents felt that they owned those roads and had signs up all over the place that said, you know, trespassers will be shot per Florida state statute, you know, whatever it was. So those of us that were sent out in the field to go to these addresses, it was a little intimidating. So, you know, just making sure there's some training and some health and safety, right, and some, you know, those kinds of things. So, and you can also let your residents know ahead of time that these people are going to be out there. So letting them know what the contractors look like, letting them know what they're wearing, what the placards look like on their trucks, and those kinds of things. Anytime you can, you know, provide some information out there before you have people out in the field, is good too. Flyers and door hangers. And this is the one that was used in Horry County, but this is a great.
That's right.
Again, if you can figure out the target area of where you want to get information or collect information, you know, you can distribute these visual aids.
No, that was a really Carl had given us a good example of you have a big wind event throughout your entire community, and then in this one tiny pocket, you have a couple of streets that have been flooded, and they're going to have a different debris stream. They're going to have bulk debris. They're going to have refrigerators, freezers, sofas, TVs, the whole 9 yards. And so what they chose to do was do door hangers in that area to communicate specifically to that area. So they had countywide debris messages, but then to that area they chose door hangers as the, and again, we will go into greater detail later, but door hangers were the means of communicating to those individuals. But, and you can kind of read what crews will be in your area. Please place storm debris on the curb. Trucks are scheduled to be in the area. For questions, call the debris hotline. If volunteers to assist you with bringing debris to the curb, please register at myrtlebeachdisasterrelief.com. So 3 simple messages. Trucks are coming, be ready, get your stuff out. If you got questions, call the hotline. And if you need volunteer assistance, go to this website. So it was really simple, 3 messages on that one door hanger.
If you're going to provide a hotline, make sure the hotline is manned, and if you're going to provide a website, make sure somebody's watching that website. I was curious to find out, you know, different public information offices, like obviously for the city of Houston or for Harris County, you're going to have quite a few people that work in that office, but not every city is going to have, you know, endless resources to dedicate to monitor some of the stuff. But just make sure that if you're putting the hotline together, you've got call takers that, you know, again, armed with the right information and those kinds of things.
Y'all have seen this before. It's separating your debris. This is on the website, h-gac website, also accompanying a debris video. And so Karen and I were having that conversation about the debris video that we've put together. And, you know, although we have a good, solid message, I mean, something like that, that could be recreated very quickly by, you know, a member of your community, putting it on Facebook Live. If you guys have the script, you can make your own separating your debris at the curb video. I mean, this is tailored to where you can erase this and put your own logo on it, but wouldn't it be great to be able to have one of your own people, solid waste director, mayor, giving that direction based on a script? It could be you and publishing it. You are your own, everybody's their own publisher of content.
Yeah. So we do have this. So we have this debris video that describes set-out procedures, and we put it together a few years ago using camera crews and production and all that kind of stuff. But you don't need that anymore. You can just videotape somebody doing it for your community. So we've got the script. We'll put that up as part of the public information package, and then then you're your own PIO.
I got to tell you, I recently started publishing content to YouTube, just silly stuff my kids do, and they thought it was mind-blowing how cool they think I am because I put some video of them on there, and but they watch it all the time. That's, I mean, again, they're 6 and 3 and blah blah blah, but and so I'm pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't take much to get cool, but I will tell you that being able to publish your own content, it really is so easy, where I take a video of them doing something and then boom, it's there. I know it sounds rudimentary, but some of this stuff from a public information perspective, you saw how quickly we can push information when it really does move fast. As does newsprint seem to faster news cycles.
So Francisco talked about this a little bit, but just being able to, you can get information to the newspaper for print faster than you used to be able to. So this is a great tool. A lot of people read the newspaper. They trust the newspaper. So making sure that they've got an article to run or whatever information that you've got to put out there. A lot of people will think that the newspaper is more reliable than anything they read on social media. So making sure that you get that out there, and it's you can provide your message in multiple formats, again, in different languages, things like that. There's some information out there about using Twitter and social media to collect information. We talked a little bit about this earlier, just coming up with your hashtag and then following that and making sure your residents have that, and it was really interesting when Becky was telling us what our stats were on our feed. So figuring out how many people are watching it, figuring out how many comments, and the group that you can what was it, 16,000 or 1,600 users that you can reach. So using all those metrics to put out the right message and those kind of things. Again, there's all kinds of apps out there. There's National Weather Service has stuff. I know I was looking in Texas, maybe the Department of Transportation. I'm sure they've got like an app that we've got 511 in Florida, but basically
road closures. Yeah,
road closures. It'll tell you what's going on there. So it'll tell you what the best route is. It'll give you updates throughout the day. So coordinating with them to say, hey, can we put some information out about whatever it is? So there's different tools out there that you can use. Again, you want to target your intended population. So we talked a little bit about Nextdoor. This is a really good way to find that target.
Everybody know what Nextdoor is? Anybody doesn't? Maybe for those on the road, just can you describe Nextdoor?
So you sign up for it using your zip code, I believe, and it'll give you information. It's an app, and it'll push information, depending on what your settings are, it'll push information to you about things that are going on in your neighborhood, and it's open for anybody to post on there. And so in my neighborhood, I hear about gossip and bears, and that I live in kind of a rural area, and so bears are a problem getting in everybody's trash can, and whoever's driving a Ford Focus 90 miles an hour is in deep trouble in my neighborhood. So it's by neighborhood though, so you can you're talking about certain small areas that got flooded. You can use this to post information. Again, it's open. I mean, anybody can post on it, so you're competing with bears and the Ford Focus, but hopefully you can get some really good information out there. And it's also a way that you can track information. So different hazards out there. People are going to tell you, oh, there's an abandoned vehicle over here, or we've got a leaning tree or stumps or whatever it is. I mean, they'll post it up there, so you can keep track of it that way as well. I don't know, what, are you on Nextdoor? What's going on?
No, I'm not. We have Facebook pages through the neighborhood that I personally am involved in, and again, it's a lot of selling your stuff, which is what you have to kind of compete with, selling sort of Johnny Jump Up or something along those lines, or refrigerator freezer, and then just, you know, again, news about the community. So, but I think it's the most important thing is there are those ways to target and pinpoint. You got to cast a wide net, but you can't target some of your messages.
One way some of the community leaders in my neighborhood are using this, we are in the process of, nearby city is, I live in unincorporated county, nearby city is trying to annex our area, and it's a small area, and so they're using Nextdoor to rally against becoming part of the city because nobody wants to pay the taxes.
Fight them.
Yeah, so that's how some of our elected officials are using Nextdoor, is to reach our specific community, to go to town. I got to go to a town hall meeting next week to fight for for unincorporated county. So
hell no, we won't go.
Right,
yeah, that's
right.
good.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
So you know, again, you can. I use this all the time, trying to gauge disaster damage, looking at what pictures people are posting. You can get an idea of how big is big and how bad is bad. So, you know, using Twitter to follow different news networks, you can send them your information. They can retweet your links and things like that. So
when I found these, I put Dallas tornado debris. That was my search engine, and I got one example of a damage assessment, one example of a town pushing out information about progress, and then one example of a community who is not happy that their county wasn't picking up their debris. So with 3 search terms, you know, and again, for your community, it could be LaPorte flood debris or whatever it is, Harris County flood debris, you can really pick up stuff very, very quickly from different sources out there.
You know, again, using different resources for road closures and things like that. It sounds like Texas.
Yeah, TxDOT does a very good job of that, as does Transtar. There's a lot of different sources out there.
Transtar's fascinating. I've been over to that location. It's got the, you know, the EOC there, and you can monitor all the traffic and you can see what's going on. It's pretty cool. So, you know, the impacts of social media is just, you know, with Hurricane Sandy, more than 20 million Sandy-related Twitter messages were posted. I mean, there are some massive impacts that social media has on getting the information out. Again, everybody is a content producer now. You know, just some other ways of using this. Again, the safety check. There's a lot of different apps out there that you can report back in, but the same technology can be used to report in any kind of information. I mean, this is safety check that you could use.
Flooded streets, debris. I saw yesterday, and this is hopefully something we can incorporate into the next presentation, is that there is something that IAEM, International Association of Emergency Managers, is now, I don't know, I just saw it yesterday. I haven't really gotten to dive in, but I know this is where the industry's going, is that for damage assessments, IEM seems to be supporting a particular software where they're trying to get people to download it or download the app, and that they can push content in the way of damage assessments. Hey, here's a picture of that road closed. It goes up, it's geolocated, and we have that record, and that's where the industry is going. That's where so all these teams of damage assessment teams, which aren't going to be replaced, but they're going to be augmented by these people.
Well, it's like Esurance, right? Weren't they the first ones, Esurance, that came out with take a picture of the damage and then we'll process your claim? Kind of the same idea.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. So this is something I was at the National Emergency Management Association conference, and something to be watching out for is the whole idea of public information in a box, where the information being pushed down from the federal level isn't as trustworthy as when that information is pushed out by that county judge or that emergency manager or that mayor. And I mean, it goes back to something, you know, what Francisco was saying. It's the message, yes, but it's the messenger even more. And so what is being driven by FEMA is to push this out to faith-based organization. You know, people like to use the term something in a box. This is public information, or h-gac in a box. I think kind of a play on Jack in the Box. And what they are trying to initiate is, you are the help until help arrives. Do not be looking for other people out there. You are the help. And ready.gov/until help arrives is the website. But a big change is in the messaging from the feds is, everybody hears the first 3 days are on you. You're the first 72 hours. Well, now we see that movement to, really, guys, more like 2 weeks. And I know we've been telling you 3 days, but 2 weeks you're on your own.
That's a huge jump.
That is a huge jump.
That's huge.
I think it's close to 11 days of jump. That's a lot.
So one of the challenges that we're having in a particular community right now is that FEMA did not set up a disaster recovery center until 3 weeks after the disaster hit. By that time, the people that were impacted the hardest left, and there's no record of where they went, so they're in the wind. And now you've got a community that's trying to figure out, well, where did these residents go? Are they coming back? Are they, permanently displaced? They've abandoned homes, and now what are we doing as far as demolitions and things like that? And so if they're not coming for 3 weeks, it's on the local jurisdiction to get out there immediately and start figuring out, what the damage is and where people are going and how to deal with that, because people aren't going to be able to wait 3 weeks. If your home is destroyed or it's flooded, they're not going to be able to wait 3 weeks for FEMA to show up and provide them information about individual assistance and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. It falls on the community to find that.
And that whole local messengers are key. And whether you're talking about debris removal, you're talking about evacuations or sheltering or long-term sheltering, having the local messaging. And I can't share with you enough how incorporating faith-based organizations into that messaging is part of that solution. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We are at 10:50 about, and we will come back at 11:05. And after that, we're going to be talking about public pressure, debris hotlines. We have some case studies and a activity, and we'll get you out about 11:45 or so. So we have cookies in the back and hot sauce. That's how you take your cookies. So those on the webinar, please hang tight. We will be back shortly. Hey, we are going to get back. Do we need to unmute anything for the webinar? Okay. So our final segment is going to be dedicated to seeing a couple of items relative to public pressure and some more nuanced issues, and then we're going to do a activity that we have prepared related to public information. And so, Karen,
all right.
over to you.
So just to kind of wrap this section up, we talked about this a little bit already. Carl, you mentioned, your public officials and making sure that they're not over-promising things, but managing the balance between your public demand and your actual operations and what you have in contracts and agreements and mutual aid and all those kinds of things, and making sure that that balances out. And the way to do that is to provide reliable information to the public so they know exactly what the operations are. So, sometimes you'll get this public perception is just a small snippet of what is actually going on. All they can see is the debris in front of their house. They don't see that there's a county-wide initiative going on. So being able to provide them with more information. Also, just managing the demand from the public versus your timelines with contractors. So 30, 60, 90-day periods, what needs to accomplish in those timelines, and making sure that you're balancing the demand from the public versus what you're actually going to do as far as trucks and passes and those kinds of things.
So if you equate this to what happened in some communities after Hurricane Matthew, is that they had a disaster there in Hurricane Matthew where the residents, it was almost a nuisance disaster for some. It was a lot of debris, but people wanted to return to a sense of normalcy, and so the community there had a contract with a debris removal company that said they would pick up the debris in 90 days, and that was their period of performance pursuant to the terms of the contract, and they would bring assets in to accomplish that scope of work in that period. And generally speaking, that's how long these debris operations wanted to take. Well, this particular community wanted to pay or wanted to have them do it in 30 days. And the vendor said, no, we're going to do it in 90 days. That's what our contract says. That's, what we are able to pay our subcontractors. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. And they said, we'll pay you $2 more a cubic yard. And that's when a contractor's ears perk up saying, holy cats, I'll be able to pay my subs more. I'll be able to get more research, or not research, I'll be able to get more resources, and I'll be able to get the debris. I mean, quite frankly, the debris is going to be picked up in the same amount of time, regardless, in a lot of instances, but it just may be able to pick up that first piece faster. So now you guys have heard me, like a broken record, talk about contracts, and anytime you make changes and touch those contracts, you're opening yourself up to liability. But I will tell you, this was driven by public demand and by public pressure, and that the public, their perception was debris wasn't being picked up fast enough, and so that government made decisions that are now potentially going to be a cost liability because FEMA may de-obligate that amount of money, any contract changes, the extra $2 or the extra or what they actually paid. So there are I guess what I'm saying is there are consequences to actions that are not always immediately apparent, and public perception and public pressure may drive some.
So what would be a way to, like a solution to mitigate that, maybe to provide more information up front on what the progress is, or how many cubic yards have been collected to date, or, just
my solution to mitigate this is that that speaking to the elected officials was going to be pointless. But if I'm responsible for operations and I'm responsible for making sure that even though my city manager or my boss may have told me, I don't care how much it takes, I don't care if the feds or Trump or Obama's going to reimburse me, we just need to get her done. You can say that right now, but I know somebody's going to forget that was said 6 months later, and that's when it really counts. So the long-winded way to answer your question is I start talking with FEMA and the state, I can't worry about what my mayor or manager is going to do. What I'm worried about is how am I going to be able to incorporate this to FEMA and have them tell, either them tell the city manager, or I start working independent and say, listen, this is what our elected officials are doing. Help me help you.
Okay.
Or that's how I'd answer that question.
Okay. A couple of challenges with debris hotline. So we talked about establishing hotlines and some of the issues that you get. Talk about that public pressure of what's going on. These are actual quotes from a hotline that we manned earlier this year. So, everything from, when will you pick up the debris? It's all about when is this happening? So their perception is, again, what's in front of them, they see this, and maybe they're in other parts of the community and they see trucks and they don't see trucks on their street. Or the truck has been there, they just didn't have their pile out. Whatever the case is, there's their perception of when is this going to happen? I was told to move this pile over by 2 inches. Just weird stuff like that where you may have somebody in the field that's giving, different information, those kinds of things. And then, of course, the passive aggressive, are they going to pick up this debris? I can't get out of my gate, but I guess that doesn't really matter. So these are, actual quotes that we got from. But
I believe it because my grandmother used to tell me, well, you didn't call me this morning. I could have been lying on the floor dead, which I always wanted to say, well, you wouldn't have known anyways. But but that sort of passive aggressive, you got to have somebody who can handle this.
We have a call taker, and she's the same.
Because I couldn't. I would just get real smart. I'd get that smart mouth up.
So nice, and she fields all these questions, and we've got software to manage all this stuff because inevitably you got to follow up and you got to make sure. And so we have a person that is just very good at that customer service. So, because you do get these kind of off the wall questions. Some of them are, related to information that's being communicated out in the field. So making sure your field personnel are sticking to their scripts, that kind of thing. Did you guys have anything else to add to the ornery?
No, a funny one in Beaufort County. Actually, it was your hotline that they were running. Simon Carlisle with Tetra Tech was the PM there. She said, my house got egged because you guys didn't pick up my debris before Halloween.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was that's probably the best one that we have from Beaufort County.
Why don't you, if Carl could just quickly keep the mic, I would like to take a moment to recognize Ceres as today's sponsor here. I forgot to do this as we came back from the break, so my humblest apologies. But Carl, if you could Carl and I have known each other for the last 10 years or so. He's out of Atlanta, Georgia, has been a great resource and a great friend, great to work with, and have always had excellent experiences with Ceres Environmental. So, Carl, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment.
Thanks, Sean. And, thank you so much to HGAC, Cheryl, Aaron, for putting this on each and every month here, going into spring, into summer, as we're all preparing for hurricane season. Thank you to you guys, Tetra Tech, for, always putting these things on as well, giving some enlightening PowerPoints with a little bit of humor intertwined. You've heard me give these spiels before, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Just since January last year, Ceres has hauled over 6.5 million cubic yards. We've responded to every single type of event, from tornadoes to ice storms to floods to hurricanes, and really Hurricane Matthew being one of our largest responses that we've had in going on, 5 years. During that time, we operated 32 projects simultaneously. And it really is a testament to the great people at Ceres, the amount of equipment that we have, available to respond to a lot of these events. The great thing about, having such large events like this, we've been able to purchase 4 new air curtain incinerators, 3 new horizontal grinders. That brings us over to 600 pieces of equipment. We have a daily reduction capacity of 90,000 cubic yards a day. So if you think about, on a general project, you might only collect 10, 15, 20,000 yards in a day. We can easily reduce all of that material in a day, or even a half a day to bring all of that equipment to bear. But what really makes Sirius unique, particularly here in Houston, is we own a sister company called The Ground Up. You might have heard of them. They take in yard waste, they recycle that yard waste, bag it, mulch it, bag it, and sell it back in the Home Depot's, Lowe's, these hardwares in the area. But what makes that truly unique is we always have a final disposal location available for the whole stream. So all of that stuff that we might grind up at a debris site, we always have a final disposal location for that material. Additionally, all of our reduction equipment, a lot of our knuckle booms and things like that, each and every year comes back to Houston to be maintained and or repaired and ready for service for hurricane. So with that, you know, when you guys see Sirius name, you know, coming in for proposals and whatnot, please give us a strong look and potentially hire us as your debris contractor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate it as always, and thank you all for attending today. So short commercial break, but you know, we want to follow up. I think you provided a great example of just some of the off-the-wall questions. Oh, so hold on. Wait a minute. You didn't say the story, did you? Of what the lady said?
The egging?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I
Time jump.
Took a mental break. But yeah, from a public information perspective, the hotline again is just a great way. Even though some people use their phones more for texting than talking, it is something people are willing to do.
One thing about, you know, I mean, again, the consistent message, make sure you got the right call takers, somebody that's, you know, polished and you know, can, you know, handle some of these off the wall comments and questions. But there's software that you can use to log the calls and log the data so that, again, you can put an address or a pinpoint with all of these concerns. So you can track where these issues are and then, you know, have a mechanism to follow up with them as well.
The follow-up piece being a big key component.
Yeah, we were talking about case management earlier today. I mean, that's tough to maintain that. One thing, again, with the data that you're collecting, so every time you get a call or, you know, with your debris, data that you're getting on you get a daily status report and those kinds of things, there's this delicate balance between all the information that you have and all the information that you want to share. So, you know, just because you have a geo portal that shows where all of your trucks are located, it's probably not something that you want to post to social media because then you've got a different issue on your hands. So making sure that you're balancing the right level of transparency and granularity to the right audience. So, you know, again, what do you want to share with your elected officials? Because they'll turn around and put that out to the public. What you use for operational communication and coordination, so the people in your EOC, your debris managers, your supervisors, people that are making decisions about operations. You know, obviously you want to be able to share the geo portals and all that kind of stuff with them, but this might not be something that you want to give to elected officials or the public because you'll get even more questions about why all of this is happening the way it is. There's a method to the madness. You know, there's priority routes, there's critical facilities, there's a reason why debris zones are set up the way they are, and sometimes you can't just, you have to do a lot of education and training with the public in order to share this level of information with them where it's, you know, useful. But, you know, a lot of this stuff is used for operational communication and coordination. So being able to figure out, you know, what to share and what not to share.
You know, a lot of solid waste departments have or have started to use apps. I know City of Corpus Christi has their own app. Their solid waste department for the City of Corpus Christi has their own app. You have solid waste departments with their own Facebook pages, like the City of Houston Solid Waste Department. We've seen even Columbia, South Carolina. There's some other cities. I think Dallas has their own solid waste app. So
Dallas, Fort Worth.
Yeah, Fort Worth has their own solid waste app. So if there is a, or even 311 apps, where I'm going with this is that you may want to look at publishing content to those apps that is related to the disaster?
So I think you could show collection days and bulk pickup and recycling days and those kinds of things, but you may also, like John's saying, incorporate your debris days and things like that or timelines into these things as well. So
on a week basis, say we're going to be in your area or into first pass. And then next is the iPause system, something in general just to make you aware of. This is happening at the federal level with the ongoing dialogue with the new FEMA administrator, Brock Long, and under the new administration. But iPause is something, has nothing to do with cute cat videos on YouTube. Yeah, I know, unlike, this is the integrated tool for a number of different weather systems and a number of different alert systems. And then finally, we're going to get to our activity and take a few minutes to talk about social media, which we've talked a lot about, which is some of the challenges, mechanisms, and tools to monitor. And I'm just curious, either for those on the phone in the webinar or those here, how has social media been something that you've been able to actively incorporate into your disaster operations?
Is anyone using any of the Nextdoor apps or anything like that to push out information post-disaster for like the floods or anything? Yeah.
Sure. Oh, whoop, whoop.
We've used Nextdoor quite a bit with different things, and so we do put messages out on Nextdoor. We also work with crisis cleanup a lot and with the faith-based community, and we monitor the pages of some of the community groups that are talking about the disaster relief efforts in their communities and the needs in their communities. So we do all of that.
How many people do you have working on that, just out of curiosity, like monitoring the Facebook pages? Is that their sole purpose, or they're multi?
Well, and it depends a little bit on
where
the
you
disaster.
are. Yeah.
I'm with the Housing and Community Development Department, and so depending on how severe it is, we may have a JEC at OEM, and then there are a number of people.
Right.
When it's just our department, like in the 2016 tax day floods, it was 2016. We were working specifically on trying to fill the housing needs because there were so many apartment dwellers who had been displaced. And so in that situation, it was primarily our department monitoring, and I think the mayor's office and I think the health department were also doing a little bit. And we weren't as coordinated as we could have been, so solid waste was probably involved in that as well. But one of the interesting things about coordination with that was because there were so many apartment dwellers, we had about 400 people in shelters that, for various reasons, we were forced to move out of shelters after 1 week. And we had them in hotels. Mm-hmm. During that first few days when it's the city picking up the tab on that. So we coordinated with, not just with FEMA, but with the apartment owners and with solid waste, so that as debris was cleaned up and as an apartment came back online, we could get that family out of the hotel and back in their apartment. We had not ever had that level of coordination before. So not quite social media, but.
That's great. Thank you. Anybody else using different resources, different mechanisms for communication? No?
The city of LaPorte do, but it actually goes through the emergency management office. So we have our own Facebook page, and city of LaPorte has its own web page also.
And do you get feedback from users on that? Do they post comments?
Yes, they post comments. Yes.
Good, yeah.
Good and
bad,
bad.
And different.
Good, bad, and different. Yes.
All right. Well, so yes.
We're the Public Information Office of Harris County Community Services Department, so we basically rely real heavily on Francisco and the emergency management team to make sure that the information that we push out before we push it out is valid, good, solid information. because they don't want to push out information that's incorrect,
right,
and mislead the public. And so we have our own website, and so we push that information out through our website because we have a website that stands up at the time of a disaster, and it's well known. We have Ready Harris, and so that stands up, and we're constantly pushing information out that way. Along with that, we also have we use the various social media outlets. Now, I'm very, very excited to go back to my office and let them know about this new Nextdoor, because first time I heard of it, never heard of it before. And so I'm absolutely certain this is going to be something that we're going to utilize, but never heard of it before. But prior to today, we've always used our website, and we've used the various social media outlets that our office has, but we also would use our own personal social media, our Facebook pages, and to kind of share information. But we don't get the feedback on our personal pages. We do, but on the counties we don't.
Just out of curiosity, when you coordinate with Francisco, do you do that virtually, or are you guys in the same? Do you have a joint information center physically set up?
We have a joint information center where we'll have somebody that's stationed at the Office of Emergency Management.
TrainStar.
And so at TrainStar, yes. And so that information is constantly being fed back to us.
Gotcha.
And so you have that person that's kind of like that
so
liaison.
physical
that's
and virtual.
Exactly. And they're constantly feeding information back and forth. And as they're getting it, they're giving it to us. We push it out, and you kind of got this loop going on.
That's great.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't talk about, there's been this surge in ham radio operators, because if communications are down, digital's down, everything's down, you can still communicate via radio. So I know there's a lot of communities are looking into finding those amateur ham radio operators and things like that to utilize potentially in the catastrophic disaster. So, yeah, gonna get a handle.
Probably didn't need to be.
So we've got a little activity, and I think we're going to do this in
tables of rows.
Tables of rows. Okay, so what we want to do is come up with a 15-word message and a hashtag. So if you want to get with your group and come up with a 15-word message, I think Table 1 is working on.
Oh yeah, so your messages are each based on a different scenario. So the first group is you guys are going to tell people how to put debris safely out on the curb. Okay, 15 words or less, which is about 180 characters.
Yep.
Second one is getting your debris to the right-of-way.
So set out procedures. First one's health and safety.
Health and safety focus.
Safety focus is the first table. Second table is set out procedures. And then
third is the final pass, your last day to put stuff out. So if you could take a few minutes, and then we'll read them. But again, 15 words or less, and a hashtag. And I don't recommend really long hashtags. Some people do that, like, hashtag Karen's wearing a purple sweater. Cardigan, actually. Yeah, work together. We just kind of wanted to make this fun, but, demonstrate, it is kind of tough with 15 words left.
I'm excited about the hashtags. I can't wait to hear.
I am. That's my. I am too.
Yep. All right. Yeah, you can elect a leader to Ready to judge some hashtags?
Yes, that's right.
All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and figure out where the mic is. There it is.
Okay.
Great.
So table one, team one. Do we have an official spokesmodel?
Well, I guess we just had our vote. Yeah. So what we went with, and pardon, I got a lot of chicken scratch here, is don't cheat the environment. You have cheat written out, construction and demolition debris. You have household hazardous waste. You have electronic waste, appliances, and then trees and limbs. And then we came up with a few hashtags. Hashtag don't cheat. Hashtag e-waste. Hashtag tree debris. Other things like that you could probably throw in there. Hashtag appliances or waste. And just go through each one. That's kind of what we came up here in just a quick 5 minutes of chat.
Awesome. I like the idea of spelling out, a word, like using the word as an abbreviation and then spelling it out, because people will remember that. They'll remember the different debris streams from that.
Have you done that before, the cheat thing?
Yeah, we did it in Livingston Parish this past go around, and it worked really well.
Cheat the word stop.
Why's that cheating? Hey, it worked. It worked. But the one thing, it's funny, I was just telling this. I walked right into the trap, let me tell you. Right into that grease trap. The one thing we never addressed in there was ammo and guns that we actually ran into quite a bit. So when people would throw out their bedside table from the floods, they'd forget that they had that loaded handgun in there. So yeah, so we had to develop protocols on how we're going to deal with all the ammo, all of the Glocks.
That's a special debris program for sure.
That we just kept, finding over and over again. What we do is we cordon off the area, and we had a hotline number that we had set up directly with the police department, and then they would dispatch somebody to come in and take care of that. We would never leave the debris pile until somebody arrived. One of our biggest concerns was, kids never just get in there and play, or you might have some stickers or something like that are in there. You don't want those items to fall into the wrong hands, whether they be kids or whether they be criminals. So we had to develop security protocols for about that. That was pretty wild. You don't necessarily think about that all the time.
Yeah, there's some guidance out there on handling debris as evidence. So, like when you've got a terrorism incident or something like that, there's a whole handling process for for that. So.
Yeah, Alan Morse, if you're really interested in that, Alan Morse, who works for Ceres now, he was the core debris SME, subject matter expert, and he helped develop the entire 9/11 debris removal response in the World Trade Center. And when they removed all of that debris, it was all evidence. So they had a number of different security protocols that were in place for the FBI, Homeland Security, various federal agencies to come in, review that debris stream for any sort of evidence that they might have found from the terrorist attacks. It was pretty wild to hear about his experiences.
The guidance that I have is from California OES, and they adopted it from that incident. So their standard operating procedures are from that.
Is the documentary about that 9/11, is that on YouTube? Because I've seen it at a conference that I went to before. I don't know. It was really interesting if anybody wants to try and find it and watch it. But.
I don't know. I call up Alan.
Yeah.
Rehash the story.
Awesome. All right. Team two. Table two.
Okay, well, we were not quite so creative, but we were instructive. So ours is debris will not be collected from private property placed between street and property line. And the hashtag is debris pickup fast.
I think that was over 15.
Well, it's over 15 if the hashtag has to be in the 15, but it's 14 words.
All right. Thank you, Team 2. So what was your hashtag again? I'm sorry?
Debris pickup fast.
Debris pickup fast. All right. I like that. Team 3.
Debris removal will be making final pickup through Zone 1 April 15, starting 7 a.m. Hashtag last pass, final pickup, no U-turn, no circling back.
Because that's
no
these things, yeah, hashtag drags on, hashtag get her done. I like that. I like no U-turn, no circle back, because that's where people. So do we have a hashtag, Jess?
We do. So team one was hashtag cheat, hashtag, and all the different debris streams. Team two was debris pickup fast, and team three was no U-turn, but last pass.
Yes.
Team three.
Oh, there you go.
I don't have a prize. Remember?
I know.
Yeah, but we did a trivia game one year where we were giving away, like, I don't even remember.
Tchotchkes little baskets. People got real.
It got heated. It got heated.
That was last.
Yeah.
I know.
But we did one for the 4th of July a couple years. It was during the Summer Olympics, and so it was a Summer Olympics game. And people were like, "That's wrong."
There were 5 hurricanes last year. They said 4.
Yeah, that was fun. All right, so that was the activity. We did the break. We did the guest speaker. Just to kind of wrap this up, we talked a little bit about some of these case studies. Do you want to go through each slide, or do you want to just? Okay.
Yeah, because we just have about 5 more minutes here. I wanted to use some case studies from some recent disasters, and the first one is Horry County, and this was the door hangers that were on each of the door hangers we showed you. So what we did was we looked at the area, and we specifically zoned in on which parcels were flooded. And so as you can see, the ones that were blue were turned on as flooded. The ones that were clear were not flooded. So what you saw here is you saw us being able to target those debris zones. And so that's what we, yep. Viewed actual high water rise in that area taken with their floodplain maps. So yes, we did.
To your point though, Cheryl, right now in another community where we're having a really hard time with self-reporting, we're using HAZUS modeling to try and figure out where the disaster damage actually is, because we can't, for some reason, we just can't get the address level data.
Observed, yes, yeah. We try to do that where we take some of the what was observed levels, and then what was flown over by LiDAR, and then what FEMA has as far as base flood elevations. And so we're doing that with Fort Bend County right now. We've even done it with Houston using debris points as well.
Sorry.
So, no, it's okay. You keep going.
Okay.
We in Horry County, we used a ton of Facebook messages to push out information, and we use those pinpoint messaging to assist them in the impacted area. So really tried to keep that two-way street open. Horry County is up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is a really nice place. But it had a lot of debris. They, again, were dealing with both wind as well as flood. In Horry County, we also connected with volunteer organizations, our VOADs. We actually visited with them, and we sat down and we said, okay, guys, look, when are you guys bringing your big VOAD groups down to the area? And so if it's on this date or this weekend, we're going to have 300 teams out. Guess what? On Monday, there's going to be a lot of debris out there. So let's bring in trucks to be prepared for that eventuality. So that's what we did there. We did that MyrtleBeachRecovers.org on our information, and we try and compare the two together and try to make it as seamless as possible. Because what we didn't want to have happen is a second disaster, which is that debris sitting out there for weeks at a time. absorbing county. And what we have, that area of Rio Brazos that got flooded on the Brazos River, we had a really predominantly Hispanic area, and the county coordinated very closely with the faith-based community and the Catholic Church. We had meetings there at the Catholic Church, getting buy-in from the father, can't think of his name, but having it there, having the information presented bilingually in both English and Spanish, gave us that ability to connect. And we were having a hard time prior to the disaster getting those people to register with the county. After we had that meeting, the Catholic Church was on board. We had a line of people who were signing up, letting people know, hey, we got flooded. Please check our house out. Come get free from our area. So it went a long way to establishing that connection within the community. In Dougherty County, Georgia, they actually went out and hired their own recovery public information officer, kind of like what Francisco did. They hired a recovery person. They contracted with somebody on a couple of month basis. It's not a full-time position, but debris was a part of, it wasn't his or her only job, but it was part of it. And it allowed those administrators to really focus on what they needed to do in the next 60 days, the next 90 days, versus just handling and wrestling to the ground all of those public information requests that were coming at them.
She's also doing a couple of, as we wrap up some of the response and recovery efforts, she's putting together some like news articles and case studies of her own so that she can communicate. We had some like great breakthroughs with GMA, so she's going to put together some just a public interest story about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish with the state and things like that. So
that's great. And then in Dougherty County as well, we've been able to, and it's Series Environmental was the contractor here doing this debris removal operation. Did a great job there. And but we are now using GIS data to tell the story of the recovery. You have a lot of low to moderate income areas, a lot of individuals who never registered for individual assistance, who never registered for SBA, either because they didn't know how to, they didn't, they didn't trust it, for whatever it is. But so what's happening is you have large pockets where, yes, we'll see, so for example, here, a very poor neighborhood in this area had a ton of debris but didn't have any people registering with individual assistance or with FEMA or the state or 211 or 811 or anybody, any 111s, and you're sitting there going, what the heck happened here? I don't understand it. And it's really, you have a population that was either working with a faith-based organization or they got it done themselves. But I'll tell you what, debris doesn't lie. There's debris out there, they had damage, and that's what we're really telling that story.
So last workshop, we talked about the technology advancements in the debris collection operations and how, every single pile of debris, there's a record generated for that. And not to my knowledge, but I don't see that level of data collection for any other piece of emergency management or recovery functions. We just don't. I mean, the case management data on individual assistance, FEMA, IA, and things like that, they're just not to this level of detail. And so because you have these systems that are available with ADMS and things like that, you can really show. I mean, these are the two swaths of the two tornadoes. I mean, you can really show exactly what happened. What we're doing is we're using this debris data and overlaying that with the low to moderate income maps and business district maps and farmland and all kinds of things so that we can, just tell that story, because they're looking to apply for more grant funding, and this is going to help us get there. So
yeah, because if you just look at one or two data sets, and those are the data sets you only have to tell the story, it really is myopic and doesn't tell you the whole picture. So going back to Bolivar Peninsula, and the area in Galveston County that was impacted most severely, arguably,
Is this like Mark Wahlberg's house or something? Like,
yeah.
That was the only
Chuck Norris' house.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris's house.
It with his own two
Yes.
hands.
He held it up exactly. Of course, most of the debris ended up in Chambers County, right across the bay there. But one of the big highlights here I want to focus on is the fact that a lot of those people, these are second homes, people were displaced. A lot of people did move to another county, Chambers or Jefferson County. The Bring Back Bolivar program that was coordinated through Beaumont, not even in, really in cooperation with Galveston County, but everything from re-entry to debris removal operations had a different level of complexity to it. And again, from a public information perspective, guys like Garrett Foskett, other members of the team there, had to either make a lot of trips out there across the Bolivar Ferry and over to Southeast Texas to try to reach those individuals.
All right. Well, that concludes our case studies.
And that concludes today.
Yeah.
Really. We have one more workshop that it's coming up in, I think it's August. Mm-hmm. August 31st. Okay. So we thank you for being here and being a part of this. We're going to be finalizing the public information packet, but please take that home. I think it is well worth it to keep in your arsenal. And thanks again to Ceres and Carl for being a part of this. And
thanks for participating in our game with the hashtags and everything. That was fun.
Thank you very much, humoring us today. So thanks for those on the webinar too. Have a good day. Bye-bye.